Good afternoon and welcome to the City of Casey Council meeting of the 15th of December 2020, and this is our last council meeting for the year. In line with the restrictions issued by the Victorian Government, we are holding this meeting via MS Teams and the gallery is closed to the public. The meeting is being live streamed, and I'm pleased to advise that we will be resuming public meetings in February. Our first meeting of 2021 will be a public meeting and the gallery will be open to attendees from members of our community. Thank you. Statement of Acknowledgement. The City of Casey proudly acknowledges the traditional owners, Casey's Aboriginal communities and their rich culture, and pays respect to their elders past, present and future. We acknowledge Aboriginal people as Australia's first peoples and as the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we work and live. The diversity statement. The City of Casey is home to a remarkable diversity of cultures, languages, faiths, identities, landscapes and stories. From our first Australians to our most recent arrivals and every wave between, the City of Casey welcomes and represents all community members and their respective ambitions to live healthy, rewarding and happy lives. We recognise this diversity as our strength and we aim to share, nurture and celebrate it. I'd like to welcome the panel of administrators this afternoon. I'd like to introduce firstly Mr Miguel Belmar.
Good afternoon.
And Mr Cameron Boardman.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon.
And our Chief Executive Officer, Glenn Patterson, is with us this afternoon, and the officers supporting the meeting are Jordan Barfoot and Jacinda McLeod. Thank you. And we thank all those officers who are also joining us as part of the meeting. I'd like to move to item 2, confirmation of minutes. Can I have a mover and a seconder to confirm the minutes of the council meeting that was held on the 1st of December 2020?
I'm happy to move those minutes, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Boardman.
And I second those.
Seconded, Mr Belmar. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. I've considered my obligations under Section 130 of the Local Government Act 2020 and do not have any items on the agenda where I wish to declare a conflict of interest. I also note no officers have declared conflicts in reports presented this afternoon. Are there any conflicts of interest that you would like to declare, my fellow administrators?
I have nothing to declare, Chair.
Nothing to declare, Chair.
Thank you. That will be duly noted. We have no public questions. I'm looking at item 4. We have no public questions this afternoon, but I'd just like to take the opportunity just to highlight a significant announcement that's been made today and has had some great publicity, and that's the exciting announcement in regards to the Melbourne City Football Club relocating to Casey Fields. There's been many years of hard work that has sat behind this agreement and this announcement today, and the relocation of Melbourne City Football Club to Casey Fields is a great outcome. It's going to provide a world-class sporting team which Casey can call its own and the South East can call its own, and puts us on an international stage. The new Etihad City Football Academy will sit within the Casey Fields sporting precinct and will feature an elite training pitch, 4 full-sized floodlit pitches, a 2-storey elite performance and headquarters building, and space for a 4,000 capacity mini stadium to be created as part of a future stage construction. This relocation further cements the Casey Fields precinct as a leading premier sporting precinct, and we really can't wait to see the benefits that this is going to yield for our community. Welcoming the club's 250 players and more than 100 staff will result in some wide-ranging economic and social benefits for the City of Casey, as will the creation of much-needed jobs in the area. So we're really looking forward to seeing our residents come out in force, watching Melbourne City's teams train and seeing our budding juniors learning from their heroes and watching our community enjoy the added thrill of being able to share the same pitch as the stars of the game. So I'd just like, on behalf of the panel of administrators, to congratulate all of the team at Casey that have been involved, the collaboration with the City of Greater Dandenong, and I think, this is going to be a great outcome, and we really look forward to seeing it come to fruition in our term as administrators. So congratulations to all involved, and thank you. I'd now like to move to item 5, officer reports. And at item 1, we have item 5.1, which will come up on the screen. We have the Sport and Physical Activity Strategy 2021. Do I have a mover for the recommendation?
I would move that recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. And a seconder?
Yes, I'll second that.
Mr. Belmar. Mr. Boardman, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Chair. And if I could follow on from your introductory remarks regarding the tremendous announcement of the relocation of the Melbourne City Football Club to Casey Fields, it is quite timely that we are indeed today moving the 2021 to 2025 Sports and Physical Activity Strategy, which has participation at its core to ensure that the literally millions of dollars that the municipality invests every year in developing new facilities, maintaining current facilities and upgrading old facilities, that we have an overarching strategy to ensure that all members of the community can have not just greater access to those facilities, but we can create a foundation where participation is at its core. It was interesting to note that with the announcement from Melbourne City that there's over 115 grassroots football clubs with over 23,000 registered players in the southeast alone. And as someone who grew up in what I guess could be considered a very typical, and dare I say it, Anglo-Saxon family, where it was cricket in summer and Australian rules football in winter, have that level of participation and growth with traditional football, or soccer as we may call it, just shows that the activities that underpin not just what Casey Field stands for, but what the A-League, the W League and the junior leagues are representing to younger people, really is a tremendous opportunity for the municipality and gives confidence that this strategy will be absolutely successful. I think one thing that stands out from Casey Fields that I particularly am quite impressed with, and what is worthwhile noting, is the hybrid technology that's being used on the playing surface to give it the absolute world-class aspect that is necessary for this relocation. To have a field which is a combination of live grass and astroturf that obviously has minimal impacts on irrigation and maintenance, but also provides a much superior playing surface, is testament just to the evolution that's going into sports technology and facilities management, and shows the precedent and the investment and the vision that the municipality and the City of Greater Dandenong and others, and particularly the Melbourne City Football Club, have had in developing the facility and relocating. But the sports and physical activity strategy, as I said, with participation as its core, does have 4 expected outcomes, which are represented on page 34 of the strategy. We are obviously wanting more people in the municipality to engage in physical activity and to use all of the facilities, all of the parks, all of the trails, all of the recreational aspects, indoor, outdoor, etc. We want people to feel connected to the communities through participation in physical activity. We want council to have a stronger and more reliable evidence base of participation rates across the municipality. And we want a better understanding of the barriers and motivators that affect the participation in Casey and how we can remove them. And on that particular point, Chair, if I could note that there were 364 replies to the draft strategy, of which there were 30 key themes identified, which have been represented as Annex A to the council papers to date. The aspects of mental health, of participation from potentially marginalised and disadvantaged groups, the greater participation of women in sport, greater involvement of family in utilising some of our recreational facilities, really were at the core of what the public feedback was. And the 30 themes that we've identified and the replies that have been articulated in the annex and the amendments that have been made to the strategy encapsulates that it's not just a case that those aspects need to be heard and need to be recognised, but there needs to be actions put in place to address some of those key issues. We still sadly are suffering that if we look at the ABS census data, that there's only a 51% participation rate across the entire municipality and its community of those who regularly engage in physical activity. That is well below the national average and something that we absolutely need to address. And through this strategy and its drivers and the impacts that we're seeking to achieve, we are quite confident that that will be the case. I think the announcement with Casey Fields, the upgrade of the facilities there, the upgrade of many facilities that are encapsulated in the capital works budget and through past resolutions really give confidence that the organisation has at its heart, in my opening remarks, participation and greater participation across all aspects of the community. And I commend council officers and all of those stakeholders and members of the community involved in providing feedback and developing this strategy and putting into place, and one that we're very proud of and one that will undoubtedly improve the health, the well-being, the mental health and those key participation rates of all members of the community over the 4 years of the strategy's life. With those comments, Chair, I'm very pleased to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr Boardman. Mr Belmar.
Thank you, Chair. Like Mr Boardman, I'd also like to commence my remarks by congratulating all those involved in ensuring the involvement of Melbourne City joining us at Casey. It's important that in passing this motion today, we recognise also that the facilities that are offered by Council are at all levels of participation, that are not only at elite level, but as this strategy shows, we're also about ensuring that all members of the community are able to be involved in sport, are able to be involved in activity, and that activity can be something as simple as ensuring proper pathways, proper bike routes, proper playgrounds, so that families are able to be active. So what I want to really emphasise as part of my takeaway from these documents is, as Mr Boardman has said, it's participation, but it's not only participation in organised sport and clubs, but it's also being active. That's the key. That's what this strategy seeks to drive home, that being active is something that this council wants the community to do. And that activity is across the board. We're a diverse community that plays a diverse number of sports. It's clear to me when I go to somewhere like Casey Fields, there's a variety of sports that's represented out there, which represents the diversity in our community. And I also want to conclude my remarks by reflecting on this. As part of Melbourne City joining our community, we are having the current premiers of the W League, Melbourne City women's team, joining our city and using our facilities. That's a fantastic feather in the cap for Casey in ensuring that we are having the elite team, the best team in Australia at the moment in women's football, using our facilities. That's a great message to send to our community, to say you'll be using the same facilities as these elite women, and I think that's a great thing, not only for the community, but for all the little girls out there that can think about what they want to do one day and the level at which they want to play sport. So with those remarks, I commend the motion.
Thank you, Mr Belmar. I'd just like to add a few comments and to focus on some of the preliminary feedback we've had through the work that's being done for our council plan. And that is the emphasis that our community have placed on passive areas of our community, parks, walking tracks, etc. The importance of those parks and open spaces to people, and we've experienced that very much through the experience we've all had in the pandemic during the course of the past year, just how vital those open spaces are to people in our community, particularly in areas where people don't have access to space within their own living quarters. So those places and spaces are very much a part of the emphasis of this exercise. And I do join with you, Mr Boardman and Mr Belmar, in congratulating the staff involved in preparing it, but also to the people in the community who've participated and given the feedback about what their priorities and expectations are. So with those comments, I put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 5.2 is the affordable housing strategy. Do I have a mover for the recommendation?
Yes, I'll move that.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar. Seconder? Mr. Boardman. Mr. Belmar, I invite you to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Chair. This motion is one that's coming back to Council after a period of consultation and reports. The message that this motion, the adoption of this strategy, sends tonight is that Council sees that it has a vital role to play in ensuring the availability of affordable housing. We know from the extensive research work that's been done as part of this, of adopting the strategy, that there is an unmet need in the community of Casey of over 5,000 dwellings, and it is vital that Council is involved in ensuring that affordable housing is available in the community. We know from the recent budget statement by the Victorian State Government that the big housing build has identified Casey as a municipality in which affordable housing can be constructed. And the message that Council is sending tonight is that we are going to do the things that this strategy identifies, and that is we're going to advocate, we're going to partner, and we're going to facilitate the building of affordable housing in Casey. As a council, we are not a builder of affordable housing, but we are ensuring that Casey is open for business when it comes to building affordable housing. These documents confirm the important work that we can do as a council in ensuring that affordable housing is built. And I want to commend the work of the officers that has gone into this. This is work that, as the motion shows, the 4 parts of this motion, this is hard research and data that has gone into this work. And the strategy has been developed over a number of years, and it's part of work that's been carried out since about 2015-16 with funds that have been provided to ensure that proper hard data goes into our strategies. And so with those remarks, I commend the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar. Mr. Boardman.
Thank you, Chair. I echo Mr. Belmar's remarks that this is a matter that's been under development for several months and has been an aspect that has been extensively analysed and considered internally, and assisted by the recent state government announcement of significant funds to assist with the capital development of facilities which obviously are in some areas within our municipality in dire need. There are 2 aspects that I would like to reference specifically, which are also aspects which were highlighted in the feedback around our strategic development exercise just undertaken around amenity, community perceptions of safety and the availability of support services. And one of the key, or 2 of the key themes that were highlighted in the community consultation around the response to the draft strategy was whether or not, in the event that marginalised or affected members of the community were experiencing housing challenges, would they know where to go for assistance? And also, the other aspect was in relation to the role that council itself plays in increasing the supply of social and affordable housing within the municipality, either by, as articulated in the state government strategy, by facilitating a pathway for further capital investment, or working with the developer community to provide facilities as part of new and ongoing developments. And I think the feedback was quite clear that on the first aspect, there was not enough done to provide awareness to potential vulnerable members of the community on where support services lay. And on the second aspect, it was quite clear that our role needed to be elevated in order to work with Commonwealth and state government authorities and the developer community to increase the supply. And this is what the strategy is doing. And as Mr. Belmar has articulated, it is absolutely evidence-based. It is something that has been extensively consulted, analysed and articulated on the problems and on possible pathways for solution to address an issue which has those overarching impacts on amenity, safety, perceptions of crime and other matters. And that, combined with a number of the other strategies that we are adopting today and have in the past, again positions the municipality to take direct action to address these matters and to address some of the issues which unfortunately are seen as critical issues within the municipality. So I do agree with the recommendations and support the work to be done, and look forward to receiving progress on its implementation and its impact.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. I strongly support this work and the report that's been undertaken, and I think the structure of the strategic principles outlined in the report, being advocacy, partnership and facilitation, just pitch this perfectly in terms of the role that we should be playing. I also commend the allocation of funds that the state government have made to this area after a very long period of time, and a lot of advocacy from the local government sector as well. And we look forward to seeing the benefit of some of that funding within the City of Casey. So I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 5.3 is payments for public open space equalisation under clause 53.01 of the Casey Planning Scheme. Do I have a mover for the recommendation? Thank you, Mr. Boardman. And a seconder, Mr. Belmar. Mr. Boardman, would you like to speak to it?
Very briefly, Chair, this is a very procedural and administrative motion under, as the recommendation states, 53.01 of the public open space of the Casey Planning Scheme. If there is any equalisation payments required to develop contributions either for over investments or under investments or supply in public open spaces, then the equalisation provisions apply. There is a confidential attachment to this report that, of course, as administrators we have reviewed, outlining where such payments need to be actioned, and I am quite satisfied with the process. It's consistent with Section 173 of the Planning and Environment Act, and that appropriate payments and process has been applied in the circumstance. The recommendation is quite clear, and with those brief words, I'm happy to adopt the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. Mr. Belmar?
Likewise, I want to confirm my satisfaction that the appropriate statutory steps have been taken to ensure that these payments are paid in accordance with law, with accordance with the planning scheme and with accordance with the Planning and Environment Act. I've also considered the confidential attachment, and I'm also satisfied that the appropriate payments contained therein are due and ought to be paid by Council in accordance with its responsibility.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 5.4 is the amendment C275 to the Casey Planning Scheme, review of the planning framework for the Cranberry Major Activity Centre. This is a monumental piece of work. Do I have a mover for the recommendation? Thank you, Mr. Belmar, and a seconder, Mr. Boardman. Mr. Belmar, please speak to the motion.
Thank you, Chair. This is absolutely a monumental piece of work. In the time I have been working as an administrator, there is probably no larger piece of work that I have been involved in. This is the vision strategy for the Cranberry Major Activity Centre for the next number of years, and it will really lead the community and show the community what the goals are that Council wants to achieve in the next 10, 20 years when it comes to the planning of the Cranberry Major Activity Centre. What I really want to reflect on in reviewing these documents and in my review of these documents is that what Council is seeking to achieve is that the Cranberry Major Activity Centre, like any good activity centre, is one that can be used and is usable for a number of different activities from the one trip. And so one of my major takeaways from reviewing these documents and from the excellent work that's been done by Council officers is that one of the drivers of this work is the concept of the 20-minute city, the concept of a trip in which you leave your home is one that can be used for going to the shops, having a walk, going to the post office, doing a number of essential life procedures, activities in the one trip. And it's important to note that this concept of the 20-minute city, the concept of a major activity centre that offers those facilities, is one which in the past might have been considered one that was more apt to an inner city type environment. That's not the case at all. What this work shows to me, when I consider the draft plans and the draft strategies that are contained within it, is that it is appropriately considered that by proper planning of the activity centre zone, that those types of uses and that those type of activities can properly be offered in the Cranberry Major Activity Centre. For me, the three things I take away from the material as well is the three words that appear throughout the material, and that is the three concepts: one of resilience, one of activity, and one of sustainability. And it's really that last one that I want to reflect on, that what Council is seeking to do in the long term is acknowledging that we are a car-based council. And in acknowledging that, we need to look for opportunities where we can achieve more passive walking, more use of other non-vehicle or non-motorised vehicle use of council services and commercial services. And so that's one of the aspects that I take away from this work, that we are looking at ways that we can use our road network differently, we can use our footpaths differently, and we can really focus over the long term in encouraging that the community, as much as they can, get out of their cars or use their cars for one trip, park their car, and then do a number of activities. In saying that, the other important piece of work that I find in the expert work that's gone into the external work that's gone into preparing this material is a report from a GTA traffic consultants. I encourage members of the community, if there is any report you read this year, if you live in Cranberry, if you have an interest in the road network, which everyone does in that part of the world, this is the report that gives you the background material, the source data, the analysis of traffic counts that Council is using to plan for the next 10 and 20 years as to the road network. There are two things I want to reflect on, again, when I consider that, and that is that there are parts of the road network, there are parts of the transport network that Council can influence, and there are others that can't, that Council can't. But Council will do Council is doing its best through this work in acknowledging that you can't always drive down the highway at the speed of a Ford GT40 at peak hour. It just can't happen. But there are strategies that can be adopted with the use of public transport, with the location of train stations, which over time, with proper planning, will ensure that as much as possible, with time, the road network can properly respond to the pressures that it faces. So with those words, I commend the motion. It's a very large piece of work. The steps that will be taken now, as it's set out on the screen, is that this work will go forward to the Minister, seeking that the next statutory step occur in the adoption of this work, and I encourage the community to read this material, to be involved in the work, because it really is the key driver of how Cranbourne will be planned, how the activity centre in Cranbourne will be planned for the next 10 to 20 years. And with those comments, I commend the motion, and I also commend the members of Council who have been working on this project.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar. Mr. Boardman?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I echo the extensiveness and comprehensive nature of this piece of work, and equally, like Mr. Belmar, commend the council officers and all those involved in its preparation. And I think importantly, that anyone who lives or works or shops or visits or commutes through Cranbourne should really take a deep interest in the proposed amendment C275, but particularly the Cranbourne Major Activity Centre Structure Plan 2020, which I think begins on about page 100 odd within the council documents, but most importantly on page 105, the proposed Cranbourne Town Centre precincts, which really provides the future blueprint on what the Cranbourne area will look like, on how it will evolve further into not just as the 4 precincts outlined, the mixed-use commercial core, the employment services core, the residential growth precinct and the Casey complex, of course, but how it's going to be integrated, linking with further transport upgrades, as Mr. Belmar has articulated, and its connectivity based upon its central hub focus for the neighbouring areas which it services. What is quite noticeable within these reports is how quickly Cranbourne, particularly its central activities area, which really only 20 years ago was a strip shopping centre on either side of the South Gippsland Highway, has evolved into that major commercial and administrative centre. It is no longer just a strip shopping centre with a couple of hotels that have been there for many, many years, as we know. It is an administrative centre, it's a health centre, it's a recreational centre. It is a customer services centre, and it is a growing residential centre, probably, as we know, one of the fastest growing in the entire state. And accordingly, the CAD and all of its precincts need to adapt and need to meet the growth and provide the services that will best represent what the future community demands are. This is what this document does. And anyone, as I said, who lives or works or commutes or has any interest in the future of Cranbourne whatsoever really should have a good read of these documents, understand what council is advocating and calling for, and how the precinct and the areas will evolve further to best represent those community needs. So thank you to all of those involved in its preparation. We trust the Minister will use his authority to prepare the amendment, and that all of the underpinning elements within the precinct and the set core activity plans will serve the municipality and particularly Cranbourne future development well.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. And if I may just add some comments to the extensive and detailed commentary that you've both provided. This is an extremely important piece of work within the City of Casey. Cranbourne is a key centre, and it's extraordinary that even in the period of a couple of years, it's changed already so significantly. And that's why this work is so critical, really looking at that whole centre in a holistic manner to make sure that it keeps up with the changing needs of this community, with the investment that the state government are making into areas like this as part of creating better communities, as you've outlined, both of you in your comments. So I commend the work. I believe that it provides an excellent planning framework, and whilst it can appear to be gobbledygook to members of the community, it really is such a fundamental building block to the outcomes that this council are really seeking to endorse as part of a better planning framework for the whole of this city. So I too support the recommendation, and thank you both for your extensive commentary. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Now for item 5.6, which is Advisory Committee's transition to community reference groups. I look forward to the mover explaining this one. Who would like to move this?
Chair, as a point of order, I think we may have skipped over item 5.5. Oh,
my apologies, my apologies. I have a different running sheet here, so my apologies. The appointment of the Audit and Risk Independent Committee, item 5.5. Sorry to confuse those that are listening. So we're up to item 5.5, which is on page 490 of the agenda. Thank you. I believe, Mr. Boardman, you may move this.
I indeed will.
And seconder, Mr. Belmar. I invite you to speak to item 5.5.
Thank you, Chair. This is the conclusion of what has been significant process undertaken, and may I say a unique process that the municipality, and I would even argue that the sector itself, has undertaken in seeking replacement members of the Audit and Risk Committee. We broke orthodoxy to some extent by not putting traditional newspaper or online advertising seeking expressive interest or applications for committee members. We, as the report articulates and we have declared previously, we appointed a recruitment firm to conduct this exercise with a view to actually identifying suitably qualified candidates and through that identification inviting them to be considered to participate in the process. Where I think these processes in the past have not been as robust as they could is that traditional advertising or other processes have probably resulted in the usual type of individuals applying for such roles, not necessarily suggesting that there's anything wrong with that, but it probably does not allow for diversity or for difference of skills and experience to be represented with such committees. And we gave the recruitment organisation a very clear mandate that we wanted those two factors to be at the hallmark of their activity. We wanted diversity and we wanted to have a different and arguably a high level of skills so that it meets our governance and probity and other requirements that ourselves as panel administrators have desired as part of our ongoing reform of the organisation. So as a conclusion of this process, I'm very pleased to move the recommendations that is recommending that Mr John Nguyen is appointed as chair of the City of Casey Audit Risk Committee for a term of 3 years, that Ms Carol Pagnon is appointed as an independent member to the City of Casey Audit Risk Committee for a term of 2 years, and that Mr Ernest Stabic is also appointed as an independent member to the City of Casey Audit Risk Committee for a term of 2 years. And I do offer a very small apology to Mr Stabic that we did have misspelled his surname in the recommendation, although in the report we have corrected that. So I do offer that very small apology to Mr Stabic. Just briefly, if I could, Chair, Mr Nguyen is a very experienced finance executive at a number of large, if I could call them Big Four accounting and advisory firms, and brings that experience at a partner level to this role. He's also a board member of the Victorian Responsible Gambling Foundation. He's a member of the Audit and Risk Committee of the National Gallery of Australia, and he's an advisory board member of the Nature Conservancy. Under Mr Nguyen's leadership, the committee will function at a very high level. He will bring a experience and diversity of knowledge of corporate governance, of contemporary best practice in audit and risk, and specialist skills that will be very welcomed by not just the committee but by the organisation as a whole. Ms Pagnon is an experienced governance, risk assurance and financial advisor who has served on audit and risk committees with other municipalities and also has held a number of private and public sector board positions and also management positions, and equally brings significant experience in a range of fields to this role, and we're very excited that Ms Pagnon has accepted the role. And Mr Stabic is an experienced finance and technology executive. He has been a CFO, he's been a company secretary of a number of listed and private entities. He is an entrepreneur in many of his venture and startup activities, and his audit and risk committee experience includes the oversight of government technology committees, primarily working on a number of those organisations being appointed by the state government of Victoria. Three very highly credentialed individuals, three individuals that I am very excited to work with, and as a committee as a whole, we make the challenge of what the future position of the council is, and I am quite confident that with these appointments, Chair, that we will set a new benchmark in audit and risk administration and working to not just provide a further degree of probity and diligence and checks and balances to the organisation, but strategy and analysis and advice to us as administrators and to the executives to reach our mandate that we are improving our performance as a high-performing organisation overall. So with that, I'm very pleased to move the recommendations. I thank the council officers for their assistance in helping me with this recruitment process, and also to Intersearch, who conducted the recruitment activity, and I think the result speaks for itself. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Boardman. Mr Belmar.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to congratulate each of the individuals named in this motion on being appointed. I think it's vital for local government to have people who are qualified and at the top of their profession being involved in local government and being involved in public service, which is exactly what the Audit and Risk Committee is about. I note the comments of Mr. Boardman as to the fine and upstanding record of achievement of each of the new appointees, and I look forward to their work with Council, and it's a real feather in the cap of Council to be able to attract such high quality candidates to work with us. And with those comments, I commend the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar, and to you, Mr. Boardman, thank you for the work that you've undertaken in the recruitment process. I think it's an excellent outcome, and I also appreciate the guidance and support that Ms. Sheena Frost has provided to both you and to the panel through this process as well. So I will put that motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimously. And once again, congratulations to our new Audit and Risk Independent Committee members. I think they'll be a great committee and provide excellent oversight and overview of the work of the Council over the coming years. Now move to item 5.6, Advisory Committee's transition to community reference groups. Do I have a mover for the recommendation?
Yes, I move that.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar, and a seconder, Mr. Boardman. Mr. Belmar, I invite you to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Chair. This in part is a procedural motion with respect to the changes being made from the previous Local Government Act to the new Local Government Act. These committees that are listed on the motion will cease to exist, but that does not mean that Council will not stop engaging with the community through its community engagement policy and through community reference groups where appropriate. I'd like to thank those members of the community that have previously been involved in these committees, but note that in the continuous improvement and in the continuous best use of resources and keeping council governance up to date, it's appropriate as has been identified by the amendments to the Local Government Act to move to a new, different and responsive ways of engaging with the community, and that's what we are doing by adopting this motion. So it's not about having less engagement with the community in many respects, it's about having more engagement through community reference groups, and with that, with those remarks, I commend the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar. Mr. Boardman.
I really have nothing further to add, Chair, apart from that we adopted our community engagement policy at our meeting on the 18th of August, which articulated an improved and different way of engaging with the community, and this is part of the evolution and implementation of that policy. So I am pleased to second the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. I might just comment in that this is one of a number of many of the changes that result from the Local Government Act 2020, and the amount of work that our officer team have had to undertake with respect to reviewing existing arrangements, groups, policies, strategic documents has been quite tremendous, and that's obviously happening across the local government sector. But this being part of that is an opportunity for us to rethink and renew and to look at the methodologies that we apply to our engagement with the community over the coming period. And so I thank those members of those committees who have worked hard and served this community and the council in the past, and we look forward to their participation under some different arrangements with respect to community engagement in the years ahead. So I will put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 5.7 is Section 11A, Instrument of Authorisation, Planning and Environment Act. Do I have a mover?
Yes, I'll move that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boardman. Mr. Belmar, you'll second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. Please speak to the motion.
Chair, this is an administrative and procedural resolution that is seeking to appoint a number of council officers as part of a continuous review process as effectively what I guess we could call planning officers. There are two classes, Class A and B, which have been included in the attachments, but this is consistent with the requirements under the Planning Environment Act, and it allows the appointed officers to exercise their powers insofar as granting planning permits and other statutory provisions consistent with the Act. It's, as I said, very procedural. The list of individuals that are affected by the resolution are included in page 499 onwards, and their various designations and classifications. And with those brief remarks, I'm pleased to adopt the recommendation.
Thank you. Mr. Belmar?
Thank you, Chair. Like Mr. Boardman, I note that this is a procedural motion, but nonetheless an important procedural motion to ensure that Council at all times has properly delegated powers through the correct instruments of delegation to officers, so that all steps and all power they exercise in accordance with the various statutory authorities that they are being delegated to hold is done properly and in accordance with law, and to ensure the regularity and lawfulness of council decisions. And so for those reasons, I commend the motion.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. I might just make a comment here, and it is quite an outdated part of the Planning and Environment Act, and it would be joyful if it was made consistent with the delegation framework that our Chief Executive Officer has with respect to his responsibility for staff. So aside from that, I'm happy to put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 5.8 is the Robert Booth Reserve Project Resolution. And the recommendation is on the screen. Do I have a mover?
Yes, I'll move that.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar. Seconder? Mr. Boardman. Mr. Belmar.
Thank you, Chair. In moving this motion, I note that the recommendation that's being presented is very specific as to the steps that are required. The Robert Booth Reserve is a 4-hectare active open space located in Hampton Park. It has a number of users, and what is required at the moment as set out in this recommendation is that some of that work be currently put on hold and focused in the time being on upgrades to the Robert Booth Pavilion, which will commence only after the Hampton Park Progress Association, as the landowner provides unqualified written approval for council to undertake those improvements. And so this work will continue to be done. Council is engaged in the master plan that's contained in the documents, but it is important that that work occur carefully and in accordance with the requirements of the community and in accordance with the understanding and approval of the landowner. And so for those reasons, I commend the motion, and I also commend the careful work done by council officers in ensuring that when these upgrades are done, they are delivered in a way that properly addresses the requirements of the entire community that uses the facility, and ensures that the owners of the land are also satisfied that council has properly and carefully stepped through its provision of that work.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar. Mr. Boardman.
Chair, we've been having a very recent discussion around our overall approach to asset revitalisation. We have had discussions around that within some of the growth areas of the municipalities. There is some tremendous examples of new asset developments, particularly mixed-use community facilities and recreational facilities, and that equally we need to ensure that there is sufficient attention given to improving facilities that have been in existence for some time and are in need of renewal. This is an example of one such facility that we are developing a mastering plan with a view to going to public exhibition to seek endorsement and to look at all of the various uses, tenants and community groups which use the facility at the moment to ensure that we're getting maximum efficacy for future development, and also we are ensuring that future community needs are represented. So the Robert Booth Reserve project resolution is an example of our commitment to not just continue developing new facilities, but to continue to renew and improve old facilities, and one that I'm quite certain at the end of the public exhibition of the master plan will develop a strategy forward that will be universally adopted and accepted by the community and take in consideration what future needs are. So I'm very pleased to second the resolution and wish the community, and particularly the Hampton Park Brokers Association, well with its endeavours.
Thank you. And I will put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. The last item on the agenda this afternoon is item 5.9, which is the community lease for the Narre Warren South Scout Centre in Narre Warren. Do I have a mover for the recommendation?
Yes, I will move that, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman, and a seconder.
I'll second
Mr.
that.
Belmar. Mr. Boardman.
And as the penultimate council report, it's a continuation on the theme that we discussed in the immediate prior agenda item about asset renewal. And this particular facility, the council land at Warringah Park in Narre Warren South, which has been used by the Narre Warren South Scout Group for some time. It's been identified as a location for the Scouts to construct a new Scout Hall. And in doing so, that we have committed $350,000 in our 2020-2021 capital works budget to assist Scouts Victoria with the development of their new facility, which will not only service the needs of the Scouts, but will also be a multi-community facility to support other community groups via an application process. This is an example of where, as I said, we are identifying assets and other facilities that are in need of renewal. We are working with tenants and other associations to ensure that we're getting the right mix of commercial agreements, community utilisation of these facilities, and that we are developing facilities that will be best used by future needs of the community. So I'm very pleased to adopt the recommendation and to wish the Narre Warren Scout Group all the best with their future development of the new hall, and look forward to the community utilising the facility accordingly. And may I just take the opportunity, seeing as though this is the penultimate agenda item, Chair, to thank you very much for your leadership and your chairing this year over a number of months now, certainly before myself and Mr. Belmar commenced. It would have been an extraordinary amount of work by the three of us, but an even greater amount of work by the executive and all the council officers. And to really thank you for the leadership and support you've provided to myself and to Mr. Belmar, and to Mr. Belmar for the camaraderie and support that he's provided to me, and look forward to opening Bunjil Place next year to public council meetings and re-engaging with the community in a more traditional environment. But Chair, I just want to place on the record my appreciation and thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. And can I ask you, Mr. Belmar, would you like to speak to your seconding of this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just some brief remarks in echoing Mr. Boardman's reflection on the fact that this is a partnering that Council is doing with Scouts to build a facility that will be leased to Scouts, but in the long term they will also manage it and ensure that it's available for other community groups. And it's an important way in which Council ensures that Council facilities aren't only used by one particular group, but they may be managed by that group, but they're open and available for all members of the community to use. And so for those reasons, I commend the motion and commend Council in continuing to engage and partner with important community groups to ensure the delivery of facilities like this. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank you, Chair, for the tremendous leadership you've shown this year in assisting myself and Mr. Boardman joining Council and coming on board and ensuring we've been able to do our best work with Council. I'd also like to thank Council officers who I've been able to work with this year, and the quality, always high quality of the reports and briefings with which we've been presented. And finally, I'd also like to thank Mr. Boardman for his friendship and insights this year, and look forward to working with all of you next year in 2021, and doing it hopefully more often in a face-to-face environment, and looking forward to doing that for a number of years into the future. And for those with those comments, I second my second last motion for the year.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar. And I'll put that motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 6 is consideration of reports of committees, and that's a simple noting of the record of discussion that's listed in the agenda papers this afternoon. Item 7, petitions, and there are no petitions listed for the council meeting today. Urgent business, there are no items of urgent business received. So that leads me to the last item, which is to close this meeting this afternoon and to thank members of the public for joining us on the live stream, but also to echo the comments of Mr. Boardman and Mr. Belmar in wishing all of the community a very Merry Christmas. Certainly, I'm sure everybody is going to be celebrating the pending year ahead of 2021 on New Year's Eve. And I too say thank you to both Mr. Boardman and Mr. Belmar for the work and the contribution that you've made to this community during the course of 2020. Pass our best wishes on to Mr. Patterson, our Chief Executive Officer, his executive team, and the mighty team of staff that provides so many services and undertake so much solid work for this community of Casey. So at that, I bid you all good afternoon and close the meeting. Thank you.